Hey, congratulations for the Wind and the Reckoning.
Thank you so much.
How does it feel to have the film being showcased here at this prestigious film festival?
It's really exciting. We really put our heart and souls into this movie. It was a hard movie, not much time, not much money, and one of the biggest risks that people will see is that we did this film in 80% ʻŌlelo Hawaiʻi, the Hawaiian language, which has never really been done before. So taking that risk and jumping into that, all while filming this in 16 days, it was a lot. So we were excited about the film. We knew we did something great. We were just hoping that everyone loved it. So bringing it to places like this where, Asian Americans, Pacific Islanders, everyone of that background gets to see it and hopefully resonate with it and walk away learning something about our history in Hawaii. We're really excited.
So tell us how you got on board with this project and what actually drew you to this.
Yeah, so it was prime COVID. We were all locked inside, not really working, and I was friends with one of the producers, and he had reached out and was like, read the script. We think you're perfect for the role, a Hawaiian woman who's very strong and powerful. So I read it, and as soon as I read it, one of the things that really shocked me, being a Hawaiian who was born and raised in Hawaii, I'd never heard of this true Hawaiian story of Koʻolau. So reading and kind of digging into it, I really was kind of like, I need to be part of this, telling a true Hawaiian story. And I have a bunch of Hawaiian friends around. I kind of started throwing feelers. I'm like, have you guys heard of this story? Have you heard of this story? And everyone's like, no. And I was like, how is it that this story, which to me is this moment in our history when it was one of the darkest, hardest moments, this was a moment when the Hawaiians fought back and we were victorious, And I was like, how is it that we don't know about this? Hawaiians should know about this. Our generation should be proud to know that Koʻolau and Piilani stood up for what we believed in. So as soon as I realized that, I was like, oh, I'm definitely going to be part of this. So we kind of jumped in. We were just, like I said, middle of COVID. We were the first film in Hawaii that was filming in COVID. So it was really difficult doing everything through Zoom, chemistry reads, auditions through Zoom. It was pretty crazy, but I knew everyone in there. They had a really good heart and a good heart for Hawaii to want to tell this story.
It's amazing is because I didn't know this specific part of the story. I knew there was a leper colony, and that's my extent.
That's a whole nother part of it, but kind of focusing in on Koʻolau and Piilani is such an interesting way to learn about the fact that, there's people who don't even know there was the leprosy that came through Hawaii and the leper colony and Molokai and things like that, Kalaupapa, where people were taken away from their families and, in the middle of the night, women, children, men, just literally taken from their life. And the Provisional Government came in and forced all their new laws and their rules on these Hawaiian people who lived years and years without this. We had our own rules. We had our own government, in our own way. So it's really interesting to be able to get to tell the story and then focus in on it, on showing the story of Koʻolau and Piilani and how, we didn't all just go easy in the night. We fought back as Hawaiians and we gave them a run for their money.
Now, I understand you're a native Hawaiian yourself.
Yep, born and raised. Went to a Hawaiian school, did the whole thing, and then I moved to LA to pursue acting. So for me, it's like a full circle moment to come back to Hawaii and get to tell a true Hawaiian story and get a moment to speak ʻŌlelo Hawaiʻi. I'm not a fluent speaker, but I was around the language, and so having 2 weeks, it still blows my mind. 2 weeks that we had to prepare the language for this film, which, if you've seen the film, it's a very heavy, emotional film. So learning the language and then marrying that with the action was very hard. But for me as a Hawaiian, that was like a big challenge that I was willing to take.
So it sounded like you were pretty nervous. What grade would you give yourself?
If I gave myself, I would give myself like a B+, and I can kind of stick to that because I've had since the film has come out and the Hawaiian speakers have gotten to see it, I've actually gotten many thumbs up that people really approve, which is, everything to me. You're fine.
That's okay.
The biggest part of jumping in and doing the language that scared me was just not doing it right. There are still a handful of native speakers in Hawaii, and I wanted, when they saw the film, to be proud of it and not feel like that bad feeling in their heart that we just didn't do it right. So Jason and I, my co-star, we went, for 2 weeks, just every day, hours and hours of training. We had kumus, teachers that we each had assigned to us that we would just go over it and over it and over it. We were like, sometimes I'm on set and it's like fun and you have all this free time. Like this, we were just like locked in our rooms, learning our lines, trying to be super focused because the language was really important. So going through all of that and having our kumus with us every step of the way was really helpful. And then, like I said, having the speakers now see it and like tell me I did a good job, like that's everything to me because I was so nervous.
I can't imagine being an actress. You know, acting is one thing, and then learning an entire language is another.
Yeah, that was the part that I always try to explain to people. You know, we, in my Hawaiian school growing up, like we would learn like chants and olis, you know, songs. We did a lot of those things. We would learn proverbs, things that are in Hawaiian, but that's just memorization. And then you perform it, you say it, but you don't really have to have a lot of emotion behind it necessarily. So jumping into this role and realizing like Piilani, she's so strong, she's very determined, you know, she's resilient, and like being also in the elements, like we were filming on this 55-acre lot in the remote part of the Big Island, like nothing around, we're barefoot, barely covered, rain, all these elements. So there's so much going on. There's action, there's guns, and at the same time you're trying to speak this language that you don't speak fluently and bring that emotion to it. Like not only learning my own lines and my own side of it, I would have to learn all of my co-stars because as acting, like you need to react, you know? If Jason was trying to say something to me and he's speaking in his ʻŌlelo, I have to know what he's saying so I can give him the proper response. So it was like layer on top of layer of making sure you were doing a good job to make sure that that emotion of Piilani, who she is, was resonating through the screens because I wanted the audience to feel it. I didn't want them to feel just like confused, even though I was confused.
When I was watching the film, I just figured that you just need to be better than the other guy, which is Jason in this case.
I go, I'll give myself a B+ and Jason a B. No, I'm kidding. He was great. He was so good. We talk about it really often about how it was just such a stressful time. Jason and I, filming the movie, didn't even get as close till after because we both laugh about we were so stressed the whole time filming about focusing on our language. We didn't even really get to talk to each other and like hang out as much because we were both like hidden in our rooms. Like now that we've gotten to take this film to festivals and get to hang out, like I'm like now we can actually talk to each other and like be relaxed and enjoy ourselves. So it's really funny just like going through that process, but it was nice to have a partner like Jason. The funny thing is that our son, who plays our son Koʻolau in the movie, he's the only fluent speaker of our entire cast. So we have this entire cast of adults and one child, and he was the only fluent speaker. So he was like our little teacher on set. We'd be like, how do we say this? He was like, oh my God. So it was really helpful to have him. But I think that community of everyone kind of like silently struggling, but we were still pushing through was what made it survivable all the while.
Now, this is a historical period piece. I mean, we're talking about 150 years ago. Talk about being transported to that time.
Yeah, that was a part that surprisingly was easy for us only because of our setting and our situation that we're in. Like we said, because we were in COVID, our location we filmed at, it had to be really remote. We couldn't be near many things. You know, the government only allowed us certain parameters. So we were on this lot that had no internet, no TVs, barely any cell service. So because of that, all those like modern day things that we thought we were like sad to not have, it really helped us jump into that mindset of what it was like back in the 1800s in Hawaii. There weren't all these modern day distractions, you know. It was quiet. There was lots of silent moments. We would like walk barefoot on this property. We had the ocean there. We had the mountains. And that lot we actually filmed on is actually a very spiritual place. So we really kind of had moments to connect with our ancestors and really have moments of silence where you're just like, you hear the waves, you're sitting under the trees, learning your lines in the most perfect setting you could possibly think of. So I think if we didn't have that moment of COVID where it was like we had to be so secluded, I think it would have been a harder transition for us. But Jason and I really had that moment to connect with our ancestors, kind of hear their voices of like guiding us to get to where we needed to be, because we were telling a true story, bringing to life real Hawaiians who fought through this, and that was important to us. So as crazy as it sounds, it was kind of easy for us to kind of get into that mindset of 1800 just because of where we were and who we were surrounded by.
I find there's like this weird irony. You're doing a movie about leprosy during a pandemic of COVID.
Yes, so that was a big point to us. That was the biggest motivation for our director and our producer, who've had this story for like 20 years in their back pocket, and they just like couldn't find the right moment to make this movie. They knew they wanted to tell the story, and then when COVID hit, they were like, light bulb, this is history repeating itself right now. This pandemic and mask and the government overreach and people being torn apart from their families, and all of these things that were happening in real time that had happened in this story. So it really was like another one of those layers of, it was easy for us to get into this. It was funny, costume wise, when you're on set modern day and during COVID, there were a lot of restrictions: mask, gloves, face shields, all these like red level, yellow level, green level. Is very complicated, but it worked out perfect for costumes because our bounty hunters have to wear masks in the story, and they were like, we're gonna just put your real mask underneath your other mask. So it was so cool. I was like, if that doesn't paint the story for you right there of like how we're living this same situation. So it was really fun, like, to kind of live that. We actually filmed like another movie while we were there, talking about filming a movie during COVID and the parallels that we can pull from both stories, from Koʻolau and Piilani living through leprosy and us living through COVID. It really helped us kind of bridge the gap of like, I wonder what it was like to live through a global pandemic. It's like, oh, I know. I think I know how.
Now, if you don't mind me asking, because you said that this was filmed on Big Island. Which part of Big Island? It doesn't look like the ʻŌlelo side or the Kilauea side. It's not the volcanic. Are we talking about like I want to say the north part,
yeah,
where I call it like Hawaiian country, like it's with cowboys and cattle and steakhouses.
Literally what you can picture. We were on the north side of the Big Island, like out super remote, total ranch land, like cowboy land. There was just like, when I say nothing around, it was funny. So we would be trapped in our bubble. We lived in a bubble. We couldn't leave. We would get tested 3 times a week. Couldn't leave the property. And at the very end, we finally got to leave and go into the town. And it was so funny to see. Like, it was like a strip of like 10 stores, and that was the town. And we were like, oh, this is so cool, people. Like, when you're so trapped away from everyone for so long, even though we were in the north part of Big Island, just like by yourself, like no one around. And it's a dream until it's not. When you're trapped in a bubble that long, then it starts to get very sad. So even though it wasn't a big town, we were very happy when we finally got to go out and kind of travel the town and get to eat in a real restaurant for the first time and not eat like on set from our wonderful chefs, which we loved. But it was crazy to be up there, cowboy land.
I know. It's just because I've been through that area and was going, did I come back to America? I don't know what just happened.
Exactly. Big Island's so fun because, like, it has so many different, like, climates and different, like, areas. You could be in the rainforest and then in the desert and then in the lava rocks, and then you're seeing lava and then you're seeing the ocean. It's really cool. I mean, I never really actually spent a lot of time on the Big Island growing up because I'm from Maui. But getting to go there to film, it was really exciting to kind of see. But again, it was during COVID, so we didn't really get to travel much. We also tell the story of how the shot where Piilani is bathing in the waterfall, they have so many beautiful waterfalls all through the island, but the government wouldn't let us go to anything. We had to stay within our parameters in our bubble, and so it's a really cool story. Our director's son, he was kind of like hiking through with his friends and trying to find some waterfalls, see if they could find anything, because they were getting desperate at this point because we didn't have many options. And they found this like very like trickle waterfall that was right off of this like private property that they were like, oh, you guys can use that. But it was like a trickle, and like the water was stagnant, it was kind of green, and they were like, this is the best we got. And so they're like, okay. My director was very sad about it, but he was like, we got to do it. The night before, I mean, they were going through a drought, no rain, nothing. The night before we had to film, which was our last day of filming, it rained and the waterfall flowed. And so what you see in the movie where there's the actual waterfall was the flow. We were like super blessed that day. That was the only day that people who live in the property were like, it has not flowed at all before. Like the one day you guys come to film, it flows. So we were really blessed. We knew we had the creator on our side there.
Wow, that is
yeah,
amazing.
it was really cool. Still freezing though. It was so cold and I was the only one that had to get in. So not fair.
So it sounded like you had a wonderful experience, being in your, I want to say home state. I was going to say home country. Technically, this is
It's like country sometimes.
home state.
Yeah.
Being alongside Jason, and I want to say poor you, pandemic in tropical paradise.
Yeah, I know. It was so hard being in Hawaii. I know. No, it's such a dream. For me, like I said, it's always such a full circle moment to be able to go back home and film and tell these Hawaiian stories, play as a Hawaiian girl. That was something I never thought I was going to experience. Living in LA after I moved away from Hawaii to pursue the industry, I was always reading for, Hispanic girl or Native American or anything, because there was never a spotlight on Hawaiians or Polynesians yet, not even really Asians yet. And I'm Chinese, Japanese, Filipino, Hawaiian, so I've got it all. So it's just like, it was always sad to never really get to have the opportunities to play what I really am, who I really am. And when these roles finally started to pop up, like, I was so excited to jump into it. And then something to this extent, for you getting to tell the story of a true Hawaiian, a true Hawaiian story, and something that's super educational. That was something we hoped would come from the film, and we didn't know if people would receive it in that way, but it has. Like, people realize the educational purposes of telling the story, like I said, so the next generations know it. We've been so blessed to be able to show a few Hawaiian schools back home, the children. We're really hoping to get it into my Hawaiian school that I went to, Kamehameha School, as education, learning our history, learning our language, things like that. So it's cool to be part of something that could possibly be stuck in our history. And I always say, like, I'm a Hawaiian, and my passion is acting and filmmaking and things like that. And to be able to marry the two and solidify our language and our culture in film, because film is forever. That's a really cool thing to me.
So being on this production, what was the biggest lesson you learned? Because I could tell you what I learned watching this film is I didn't know that you could shoot that far.
I go, yeah, only the best marksman. I go, honestly, I don't know. But lesson I learned, I think on the acting side, the lesson I learned is like being able to roll with the punches. Because again, we filmed for that whole movie, which is a lot. We filmed for 16 days, and we didn't have a ton of money. We didn't have a ton of anything. So we were really working with bare bones and just a lot of heart and just being able to roll. Like, I did my own stunts. That they didn't make me, okay? They offered a stunt double, but I was like, I think it was so in that movement of like telling the story and the passion. I was just like, I'll do my own stunts. I definitely hurt for it after. I had nice bruises, but I think that idea of being able to roll with the punches, to be able to tell these stories that really matter. I think a big thing for me with this film, we actually have, as soon as we had the film finished and we kind of started to dance around like the Hollywood market and trying to get this film out, a big thing that has hurt us so bad, which is just so frustrating for me as a Hawaiian, is that the only negative feedback we get is that they're like, oh, it's in the Hawaiian language and no one wants to see that. And we're like, what? They're like, it's not marketable. And that was like such a slap to our face, because like, first of all, the Polynesian community is so large and so strong, and outside of that, we have traveled this movie around the world to show them that not only Polynesians care about this story resonates with so many people, so many groups. Like, not only one of this idea of like living through COVID and everyone can relate to that, but any indigenous minority group relates to this idea of our culture, our language being suppressed and taken, and this overreach and people coming onto our homelands and stepping over our culture and everything like that. So I'm like, these are important stories to tell, and your only gripe is that it's in a language that you think people aren't going to take the time to read. Like, that was frustrating for us to hear that. So it's been so great that we've like essentially showed Hollywood. We're like, you know what? Look at this. Our film has made it to Boston, Indianapolis, Alaska, San Diego, Hawaii, like LA. Like, it has been everywhere, and it's won awards pretty much everywhere we've gone, with mixed audiences of all backgrounds, and everyone loves it. Everyone walks out feeling like they've learned something and that they've really enjoyed it. So to me, I'm like, you got to just tell the stories that matter. Who cares what Hollywood and all those people think? Because like, our passion is filmmaking and telling stories, and that's what I learned from this, that Hollywood's not always right, you know? There you go.
I know, it's a wonderful story, great performances and so on, but what's up next for you?
You know what? I've been not that I've stopped acting, but I stepped back from acting. I really got into writing recently. So I think being on my last few films, I've really kind of gotten to that idea of like, why aren't we telling these stories? Like, let's start writing our own stories, putting our own faces. I get frustrated sometimes not seeing enough of the Polynesian stories getting told. So I was like, well, I'm going to write it myself. So I've been starting to write, and I'm hoping to get some of my projects picked up. That's the next goal for me. But also acting, hopefully, something next soon.
Well, most excellent. Well, hey, congratulations once again.
Thank you.
For the wind and the rain.
That's me. Thank you so much.
But thank you for this conversation. It's a wonderful film. Your performance is great. Jason's performance is great. As an audience member, I can't tell the difference between your accents, so no worries.
Thank you. Thank you. He's like A+. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.